Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Building Great Sales Teams podcast. I've got a special guest for us today. Today I have with us Jeff Smith. He's the founder at Tactical Empire, which is a men's leadership group with a focus on financial freedom. And he's a real estate investor, overall badass. You know, I've known him for about 2 years. We met in Apex, and it's always been one of those things that I felt like we've always kind of been aligned, but not really had anything to do together yet. And then you reached out last week to speak at your event, and I was honored, first of all, but then I started looking into the group, and I was like, hey, I want to be a part of this. So it was like, you asked me to speak, and then like 2 hours later, I was in the group.
Yeah, it was funny the way that worked out. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
excited, and I was just as pleased and excited to see that you wanted to hop into the group. So I'm excited to have you. I think you'll be a huge resource and an asset to the men in the group.
No, I appreciate that. I went through my Building an Intentional Legacy talk, and you know, the first time I gave that talk, we obviously recorded it, and it ended up being an episode in the podcast later on. So whenever you do 3 episodes a week, every now and then you gotta like throw something in there just to have an episode and stay consistent. But so some of the listeners have heard that talk, but in person it's a lot different, I think. And I really enjoyed myself today because I love going into groups like outside of Apex and outside of RBO and just like meeting these other men and telling them that story, you know, and then you can see their kind of heads shake after a while and stuff, and they're dealing with the same things. You know?
Sure. I think it was a very impactful speech, and I was super excited that you brought it to the group. I think it did a lot for today's dialogue and conversations. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your history. You know, I know you were in the military, you were in special operations. How do you go from that to now, you know, owning and being responsible for 68 doors?
Yeah, I don't even really talk about my military service that much. I was in special operations, yes. I enlisted immediately after 9/11, and kind of it seems like an eternity ago, and so that's why I really don't talk about it too much, because like I'm more forward focused on like what have I done recently and what am I doing now, because I in the interim I spent 18 years in the corporate world, and I also owned a gym for 11 years.
Yeah.
I started from scratch, and then we started building up this real estate portfolio in the last 4 or 5 years. And yeah, I mean, we have 68 rentals at this point. The way we got there, I mean, it's just been a pursuit of growth for me personally throughout the entire time. I mean, I knew that I didn't really want to be in the corporate world for a while. And so stepping away from that and going fully into the entrepreneur space is something that's been really good and fulfilling for our family, because we've been able to engineer the exact lifestyle that like Kirsten and I desired for our family. And now we have these filters that we run our entire decision-making process through.
I love that.
But I really knew that for us, there needed to be assets and passive income backing up what we were trying to do, because I know the type of freedom that develops for you when it comes to the decision-making process of what you have to do and what you want to do. Having young kids and things like that, time's the most important thing to me.
Hell yeah.
It should be for everybody, but like for me, that time is finite. Like our oldest is 10. She theoretically could be out of the house in 8 years. And so that's a very short period of time. She's already halfway lived the period of time that she's going to live with us potentially. And so when putting that into perspective, I mean, I knew that the priority for me was on freedom of time and freedom of location and flexibility in what we were doing. And because I didn't want to have 4 kids grow up and leave our house and then be like, I've got 5 more years to work, and then it'll be our exit strategy. So
Right.
I wanted to do work-life integration the whole time. And so we've been able to be moderately successful along that journey. And it's been very fulfilling. I mean, it hasn't all been roses and great times, but I mean, lots of lessons learned, lots of tweaking, lots of asking a lot of questions on what's serving us, what's not serving us, and what are we happy with, and what do we want to change. And so it's been a fluid process, but it's been good.
No, that's great. What can you walk me through the decision-making process from, you said how many years in the corporate world?
18 total, but it's a weird story, but I was in the corporate world. I started when I was 19, and then so I worked there like 3 years, two years, almost 3, and then 9/11 happened, and I enlisted in the military right after 9/11. But the weird thing was they didn't have HR policies and shit like that for leaving at that point in time.
Right.
Because I didn't go like National Guard or reserves. I went fully enlisted, and our HR policy at the time was like, sure, go, and we'll keep accruing time in service at the corporation. And I was like, I don't think you guys understand what's going on. I'm leaving. I'm not doing 1 weekend a month, all this. But they didn't have a policy for it at the time. And they were like, if you come back within 5 years, we'll give you a job you would have obtained had you been there. And I was like, sure. I don't know if I'll ever come back or not, but like, that's fine.
Yeah, if you guys want to do that,
right?
You know,
yeah.
But it's also kind of awesome when you think about it.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
I was very fortunate. I mean, I came back. I had a bunch of accrued time. I as far as years of service, I also had a bunch of accrued vacation and everything else. I mean,
so you came back in the corporate world, and at this point, you were in it for another 15 years. You're about, what, 38, 37 years old at this point?
Yeah, at the time.
Before you took that leap into the gym?
Yep.
So there had to be something that...
Not before the gym.
Okay.
I was doing them congruently.
Oh, I see.
So we opened the gym in 2011. I still did the corporate job for 7 more years.
Wow. So you know what I like about that, though, is that you're starting... There is no option to work in the business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So immediately you're starting from like, okay, I have to run this like a business owner would, versus... you know, showing up and doing the classes and being the manager and all that type of stuff. So what was that journey like?
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, I did do coaching of classes and stuff like that at the beginning. I mean, it was nice because, I mean, like you coach before you work.
Right.
5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., go to work, come back at night, do classes at night. I mean, when people were working out, it was kind of off hours of actual office time.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I did run some things myself early on, but I was focused on that scaling and removing myself from the business as quickly as possible. There's a lot of lessons to be learned there. I had done real estate before. I bought my first apartment complex in 2006, and that was in Illinois before we moved to Texas. And so I had experience in real estate previously, but like I had worked with contractors, handymen, all that stuff. But the gym was a new animal in that it was a service-based business.
It's a people business.
Yeah, way different, way different. So there was a learning curve there for me that was a little bit different. And it took me probably 3 years, maybe 4, to get it figured out at all. And longer than it should have. I probably would have figured it out sooner had I not had like a good job and good income that
you would have been forced to.
Yeah. And so from that standpoint, it kind of made me lazy and created bad habits maybe, and made the learning curve longer than necessary. But once I got it figured out, it was pretty smooth. We ended up owning the gym for another 7 more years after that. We owned it through COVID and everything else, and ended up selling it last May, and getting out of that business because it just wasn't serving us anymore.
Yeah.
From standpoint of like staff turnover and how much involvement it took from me, and then everything else we had going on. Like I was buying rental properties like gangbusters then. I mean, we bought 35 probably in a year.
Wow.
And
how do you know, and I know this takes us down a rabbit hole, but at the same time, there is a lot of people in sales, in leadership, that are preaching investing to their guys, but not actually doing it, not in a real sense in real estate. It's in these little crypto things or, the stock market or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And so how do you even, I can't even fathom getting 35 doors in a year or purchasing 35 properties, which resulted in, 40 something doors or whatever the case was. How do you even go about doing that in a year?
Well, it becomes a business, and you have to scale it quickly and understand the infrastructure necessary to support something like that, because there's carrying costs to it. There's trades going everywhere, construction going on constantly. Because most of the stuff I bought it, I BRRR'd it, which is buy, rehab it, refinance, rent it, and repeat. And so I did that with most of the properties because there was equity capture on the way in by doing that work. So I was able to come in with 25-30% equity in every property because I would buy them at 50 cents on the dollar and then rehab them and refinance them. And so it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, you really have to understand that it's not investing like, hey, I'm going to put $1,000 a month into that particular investment and then walk away from it, because it was very hands-on during that period of time. But I mean, it worked out very advantageously for us because we got in, started buying in 2018, and then I mean we rode the appreciation wave of, I mean, we made a lot of money during that period of time, which is through 2021 and 22, and we'll make a lot more money in the next couple of years too because of the housing shortage. So I mean, what can I specifically answer for you as far as like how do you get into that? Because like I understand it, and I understand it as an asset. Like the thing I like about real estate above really any other form of investing is like it's something I can touch, it's tangible, I understand it because I understand the financial side of it as well. But I also like it from a standpoint of it's really hard to screw it up if you're willing to be patient with it. Because if you just buy 10 houses and just hold on to them for 20 years, they'll make you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Most people that lose money in real estate either do it because they don't understand it, or they lose money because they want it too quickly. And it's not an instant gratification type thing. Like you might buy in a year that you may lose 3% on your overall property value or something like that. But like if you hold it for 20 years, just like the stock, people have no problem throwing their money in the stock market, and it loses money for a year, but it gains money for 8 years, and they rave about it. They're like, in 30 years, it only lost you money 2 years. And but with a house, it's virtually the same thing. And I mean, you're going to ride that wave. It's a tangible asset. I like the liquidity of single family homes, meaning you can, most of the time, if you take a single family home, you can sell it within 45 days and access your cash. And so from that standpoint, it gives me a lot of security in that if I have to peel some things off and I need $100,000 here or there, like I could sell one and get that cash within a month and a half. And so people think it's very, like you lock up your capital, and you don't. Not as much as you think. Certain asset classes you do. Like if you buy an industrial building, like you might sit on that thing for 18 months if you need to liquidate it.
Right.
And so you've got to find the right buyer, you've got to price it right. But single family homes, the supply and demand curve dictates that you can sell that thing pretty fast if you're willing to take a little bit off the price or sell it at a market rate and not try to make a premium.
Yeah. I think it's all context, right? If you're a fairly new investor like me, it's like fast is tomorrow, right? You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, if I put money in the stock market, if I put money in, one of these other digital mediums, I can get it back out tomorrow or the next day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what stops people from investing in real estate. It's like, oh, I won't have access to my cash, but that's the leap they have to take, right? To where they can get into it. So I guess the thing that's mind-blowing to me is like, not ever really having good credit for most of my life, you know what I mean? And then, yes, I have access to a lot of cash and stuff like that, but then my business always needed it, you know? And so I'm finally at the point where I have control of my cash flow, and it's like, could I buy 35 doors in the next year? You know what I mean? That's crazy to me. You know, it's like the leverage piece, right? Because maybe 35 doors is roughly 7 or 8 million in real estate or something like that. And, you know, and so, you know, the idea that, okay, if I do $500,000 this next year, I can leverage 7 or 8 million in real estate just blows my mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's a piece most people don't understand, because like a lot of people that are thinking about getting into real estate, their concern is like they're buying a $500,000 asset, and they think that they can lose $500,000, and you can't. Like, you have an asset of some kind at the end of the day. I mean, thing could burn down, you still have a lot worth something.
Yeah.
And so plus you only have to bring 50,000 to, I mean, or less, even in certain circumstances, to $100,000 to get that $500,000 asset. And so you don't have, like, you go to the stock market, you want $500,000 of shares, you have to bring $500,000. If you go buy real estate, you can bring $100,000 and get a $500,000 asset that could appreciate at 10% this year on the 500, not your 100.
Right.
So if you
you're making money on money that you haven't spent, basically, or you haven't locked up.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then if you're rehabbing it, then you get that money right back.
Sure.
And you do it again.
Yes,
that's the Burr method,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So, you know, I understand some of those like entry level concepts for sure.
And there's a lot of different ways to get into it too, with being able to stack up those properties with commercial lending and stuff like that, where you get into some more sophisticated methods of financing that you don't have to outlay your own cash as much, because ultimately you want to use other people's money to build up your assets. And so there's a lot of different ways to do it, but you absolutely could buy 35 properties in a year. There's no question in my mind about it. I've seen it done. I've done it.
Yeah, and
So,
I've seen a lot of people that honestly, you know, what I don't see it from this, you know, because I've been around sales orgs, you know, my whole career, and so I don't see the sales orgs owners doing it. I see the top reps, a lot of top reps, like in security, like Vivint. They're really good at it, right? So most of them come from a Mormon background, right? So they go and they spread the word for 2 years, and then they go get picked up by a company that does door to door, and then Brody Fawcett is one of them. He was a top Vivint sales rep, right? And he made a decision at some point. He was like, hey, I'm not going to knock on doors forever. I'm not going to lead sales teams forever. I want to start architecting my ideal life, right? And now he's got, you know, something like 30 or 40 doors, all personally owned. He's got his house in Hawaii. He's got his house in Arizona, his house in New York. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like he's on vacation all the damn time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he is, because he can work remotely. He's making offers, or he's getting into different real estate deals, whatever the case is. So that's the, like, when I consult with another company, you know, this is the part that I learned in mastermind groups that I didn't have before. It's like, yes, teach them sales. Yes, teach them management and leadership. But we also need to be teaching them investing, but what to do with that money.
You see that in every industry, though, even the real estate industry. Like, the people that are most guilty of that in the real estate industry are realtors and wholesalers. Wholesaling is a money-making machine. It's a hamster wheel of cash flow. And the guys that are really, really talented at it, like, they're the ones you see on Instagram driving Ferraris and stuff like that, because they've mastered
it's sales.
Yes, they've mastered
sales.
They've mastered sales, and they're making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million of income annually. But, like, a lot of those guys will reach 7 figures of income, and they'll have 0 properties that they own,
which is crazy to me.
Flippers do the same thing. Flippers do the same thing. They get in the habit. Well, wholesalers do the same thing. They have an oppressive tax rate that they pay, which is crazy, like 46% or something.
Yeah.
So, but they get used to that, the stress and the like dopamine hit of like the chase. Flippers are the same way. There's like, we've got to get it done. We've got to we're going to do 100 houses this year, and they get They get used to that. If those guys only held back 10 of them a year, like 10 years later, they'd make $5 million a year and they would own 100 houses.
How do you recommend they do those 10 houses? Is it 5 long-term leases? Is it, 4 Airbnbs? How would you diversify that?
Well, for those guys, I mean, if they're heavy cash flow on their primary business, like you, like you don't need short-term rentals, because unless you want to use them for personal use.
It could be a shiny object.
Well, yeah, but they're short-term rentals. Like, one of the best strategies to do if you're just coming up on it from an income standpoint and you're not like flush with cash, is probably like 5 long-term rentals and then a short-term rental, or short-term rental, 5 long-term rentals, another short-term rental. Okay. Because you can consider a short-term rental in this market, probably depending on where you buy it, and as long as it's a good one, it should do $2,000, $2,500 a month, up to crazy numbers. Yeah, and like $10,000 a month.
It's all about how deep you go into it.
Right. And so you do the short-term rentals for cash flow, because your long-term rentals are only going to return somewhere between $200 to $600 a door. Okay. And that's why everybody gets discouraged in the long-term rental market.
Makes a lot of sense.
They're like, oh my God. And they're celebrating with their wife, toasting champagne. And like the first profit check comes in, it's $250.
Yeah.
And you hold the thing for 6 months and you got a water heater go out and it's $1,500 and you haven't made any money. And you're like, what am I doing? And like, that's where everyone loses their steam. It's like houses 1 to 8 and like, they can't stay in the game long enough because they're like, fuck this. I had one tenant that's terrible. Like, they called me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to change the toilet. I'm out. Yeah. We got 3 houses. We're selling them all. Like, you see that over and over and over and over again.
Or you go in reverse and you buy 35 doors in 1 year.
Well, yeah.
You're like, I got to do this at a different level in order to get that dopamine hit of some serious cash flow.
Sure. And like, different levels, different devils, and you just deal with problems on a different scale. But like, but a lot of the times, I think that long-term rentals will build you massive amounts of wealth. You also have to decide the asset class you want to be in. Do you want to be in residential real estate? Because if so, there's just different asset classes that they serve different purposes. I mean, if you own a bunch of single-family homes, you're going to get a boatload of appreciation over the years. If you own a 20-unit apartment complex, you're going to probably cash flow pretty nicely, and that thing's going to rise in value, but not at the rate that your single-family houses are going to rise. But it's a solid performing business, and it's scalable because you've got 20 units under one roof, and you've got one roof and one sewer system and one whatever boiler, right? And so. There's economies of scale that come with that they're positives, right? And so the long-term rentals are easy. It's an easy way to enter real estate, but most people don't have the patience for it.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's probably why I haven't gotten into it at this point. You know what I mean? I definitely lacked patience when I had boatloads of cash, because I could make it so fast. It's like, why would I wait on a $200 a month, rental or something like that?
Well, you have to kind of just understand that maybe it's your investment strategy, and you're going to buy one a quarter.
You gotta compartmentalize that at least,
and then you're just going to leave it. Because think about doing that. I mean, if you bought 10 years ago, bought one house every 3 months, and just went out 30 miles east of town and into Seguin or something, and bought an $80,000 house. 10 years ago, it was probably 40, and just bought one a quarter. And I mean, at this point, you'd own 40 houses. They'd be worth $225 a piece, and you'd have done dollar cost averaging over that 10 years and bought them at whatever the market rate was at that time.
And what is that, $16,000 a month? And that's without pulling anything out and doing anything with it, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, they would.
Did I do that math right?
40 houses?
Yeah, $225.
Well, yeah, 200. Yeah. I mean, like, let's say 40 houses. They would rent
$8,000 a month.
They would rent for $40,000. I mean, at this point, like minimum $1,000 a month, they would probably rent for $1,400 each. I I mean, so you'd be running a nice sized little business. I mean,
Gotcha.
55, 60K gross a month.
Oh yeah, gross. Yeah,
Gross.
yeah.
But I mean, but at that point, you would have bought. I mean, you'd have 10 years of debt payment. You would have bought half of them at under 75K.
Yeah.
They'd all be worth over 150 or more at this point.
Yeah, you'd be collecting what, like, that's a lot per house.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, some of your PITIs on those things would have been like $475, and you're doing $1,400. I mean, like, some of those at this point would be doing $1,000 a month.
That's crazy.
In net.
And that's in 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm 37 now. I can pull that off by the time I'm 47.
Easily. Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like a good retirement plan, even though, like we talked about today, we're never going to retire, right?
Right. Yeah, understandable. But, like, if you understand that that's what you're going to do, and you're just going to take, and those type of deals, like, let's say you're going to buy a $100,000 house, it costs you $25,000. Like, you don't have to earmark a fortune for it. You're just going to put $25,000 in it, set it and forget it, let your management take it, and, like, not pay attention to it anymore.
And that would be my thing. You know, we talked about it a little bit today as well, that management piece, that would have to happen, or else I think y'all talked about that you pigeonhole yourself into a new job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's managing the properties.
Yeah, and we were talking about building too many verticals in the real estate space and trying to manage them all at too fast of a clip. And we've got some people that are doing that right now, and they're
okay.
I mean, if you try to do too many things, you're operating at 60% across 5 different things, right? So that's what we discussed.
Versus you go super deep and you make a shitload of money at the one thing, you can afford to hire the people to run the other things, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like Brittingham, you know, is a good example of that.
100%. Yeah, and there's a lot of people that do that type of stuff. And you can own and dominate each of those verticals. You just have to do them systematically. Like, Brandon's a great example of someone that's done that. He started in the retail real estate space, selling properties. Then he created a brokerage, and he went from there, and then he started buying investment properties. And now he runs, like, the largest brokerage on the East Coast and has 1,500 doors and a full-time flipping business, a rehab business, a mortgage business,
home building,
a management business, and a ground-up business.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that didn't happen overnight. That's been 17 years in the making.
Well, and I think at some point talent becomes a factor. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude's got a talent for that. Okay, so let me ask you this. I've leased probably 20 offices in my career, and, you know, each time I sign that lease, I'm like, man, you've got to get into commercial real estate. Like, you're leasing all these offices. There's always a need for them. You're always moving offices. You're always paying off contracts. And, like, you know, it was the bane of my existence for a long time. And now that I'm in consulting, I'm going to end up with one office, and that's nice, right? But I feel like because I've leased so many offices and I've been part of that management process, like, that may be something that I would be interested in.
Yeah.
In making it, creating, you know, and here's the concept is, you know, like, you saw my office today.
Yep.
One of the things I appreciated about it is, you know, and they're wasting a lot of square footage with those hallways, you know, but, you know, they spent time and money and effort in the look of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
beautiful.
It's a beautiful office space. And, like, I would do at a minimum that, but then I would create, you know, probably incubators in the space, right? Kind of like Geekdom is one of those places where you've got a bunch of startups in it.
Yeah.
You know, so the office is leased at $500. I always appreciated the office spaces that had those, like, Regal. Is it Regal? Or you can go and lease a boardroom for a little bit.
Like co-working space.
Co-working spaces, right?
Yep.
They had it within, and then they had, like, normal offices outside of that.
Sure.
And it created this energy, you know, and it was all, like, brand new entrepreneurs paying $500 a month for the little office space.
Right.
And just, I think I would enjoy that. You know what I mean? If I had multiple locations in cities in Texas.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Slippery slope.
I love commercial because, like, triple net leases, there's nothing better than it. Because you just offloaded all of your expenses and your taxes.
And I hated triple net leases.
Everybody does, except the landlord.
Yeah.
Because all the landlord's responsible for is strictly the loan then. And like that's what if you have a loan. and like that's what they have to take care of. I mean, they pass off all the expenses through CAMs. Like if you have to put a new roof on the thing, it's on the tenants. If you have to, if the taxes go up 15%, it's on the tenants. Like, so, yeah, I mean, those are beautiful buildings if you can get into them. But like co-working spaces are a little different because someone else is on that large lease. Okay, so you may be the co-working spot that rents 50,000 square feet, and that company is on the lease for that, and then
just subleasing,
and then you take 50,000 square feet and you're subleasing it to all your people in there, and so at a premium. I mean, they make bank in them for sure. Man, I'm trying to think. Upwork or whatever.
Yeah,
like it was that guy ran like some monster Ponzi scheme, I think, and like, got in a lot of trouble. But it was a major real estate play. I mean, they were taking down like some primo real estate space in big cities, like very, very prime real estate. And so that bubble popped, though, unfortunately. But I think there's ways to do it, especially in up and coming gentrifying areas where it's artsy.
Yeah, like this one.
Yeah. Or Austin has a lot of spaces like that.
Yeah.
I mean, this one's beautiful. It's exactly like what I would think it would be. Throw some coffee shops in there, a brewery.
Right.
Like there's an Upwork in Houston that's in Galleria, which is near where my gym was. But I had an office there for a minute, and they had brewery taps and stuff like that you could just go out and hit the.
That's crazy.
Fill a pint anytime you wanted, grab a coffee anytime you wanted, and like that was part of the perks of having an office there. So it was a little too not work related for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so I guess a little less tactical here and more into the impact that you're making in your group.
Sure.
So can you walk me through kind of the concepts that you executed? And this is just a guess, executing in your own business, your own life, and you started seeing results, and so you're kind of bringing that to your group.
Yeah. I mean, like, I have had a lot of experiences. I've done a lot of things, from special operations to business ownership to the corporate world. I've been successful in a lot of things. I've failed at most things, which gives me a lot of experience and wisdom. I've run masterminds for probably 5 or 6 years now. Okay. For different organizations. I run a fairly large mastermind for a gym mentoring company that is a high-end, upper echelon gym owner mastermind that I run. And this Inner Circle Tactical Empire one was just a passion project that I started about 18 months ago. I wanted a group of men that we would kind of have our core tenets, our pillars, and build leaders out of the group, and ultimately with the focus on family and being better husbands and being better fathers, while pursuing financial freedom. And it's mostly entrepreneurs in the group. There are some corporate guys in there, but mostly everybody's kind of on this same journey and same path of like pursuing growth and pushing the limits of what they're capable of, but also like trying to make a shit ton of money for themselves and their family ultimately. Because I mean, I don't really shy away from that topic. Like, I think it's important.
I noticed that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. I think money is a beautiful tool, and I think it can be just like anything else. It can be used for good. It can be used for evil. It could be whatever. I think the amplification of who you are is going to happen the more money you make. But the more high value, high integrity men we can get to a level of wealth, it's going to allow them to make a larger impact. And like, that's what's important to me.
100%. And you see it all the time. Like, all these people talk about their grandfathers and the men of integrity and the men that they were, but it's like, you know, they made $50,000 a year their whole life. You know what I mean? And it limited the impact that they could make. They made an impact with their family, which is awesome. And at minimum, if that's all we did, we'd have a way better world. You know what I mean? But I think you're called and I'm called to do a lot more than that. You know what I mean? That's the reason why we get up and speak in front of these groups and stuff like that. And leading right into that, you know, the last question I typically ask is, what is legacy to you, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Man, the legacy I want to leave behind is that I first of all, I want to finish out my life leading as a man of honor and of high integrity, because I mean I've had slip ups in my life. I've not always been on the straight and narrow in all different ways of life. I've screwed some things up that I'm not super proud of, and but I want my kids to ultimately understand that you don't have to be perfect, and you can still be a great human, and you can still positively impact as many people as possible. And then, like I said today in the group, like I want people to understand how short life is and how important their actual presence in this world is. Because I think people should, like, they go about their business and we get busy and they think they're not important. And like, I want my kids to truly grow up and believe that they can be whatever they want to become. I don't want them to fall into like conventional norms or the status quo.
Right.
And so for me, like, a lot of that is like leading by example, because that quote where they talk about like the parents that tell their kids you can be whatever you want to be, but then the kid turns around and says, well, then why aren't you? Like that quote always resonates with me. And so like it's important to go out there and chase that stuff. And so for me, my legacy is with my family ultimately, but like I do want to continue to impact young men. Growing up without a father was a very vital part of my progression and growth. And so like I spoke to a football team, in a high school football team earlier this year. I just enjoy impacting young men because I think it's very important. And so like I enjoy running the group that I run, but like, you guys are all peers of mine, you guys are all my age, but what I want to do is I want to teach you financial aptitude, investment strategies, so that you guys can all go out and create your own fucking groups and like have hundreds of people under you, and just impact more and more men, and which will create better households, more structural soundness in what we're growing as Americans and as a society. And I think it's just that's where change starts. So,
man, we almost have to do another episode so we can talk about that. You know what I'm saying? Because we got to get Ryan to church. You know what I mean? He's got stuff to do. But no, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing that with us. You know, the what others may see as the kind of the boring real estate stuff and the fun legacy stuff. You know, it's all both very important. And like you said, it's takes a longer to get that satisfaction with the residential real estate and everything, but you know, look what you end up with. You know what I mean? And I believe in that very much. So I just want to thank you for coming on the show. And if somebody wants to join the group, where do they go to do that?
You can just DM me at Instagram. Is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. It's just Real Jeff Smith.
Okay, Real Jeff Smith.
Yep. And you can email me at jeff@therealjeffsmith.com as well. And I'm happy to chat with anybody.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to growing with you guys in the group, and let's get building.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. Be sure to execute on what you just heard, and let's get building. As always, remember to subscribe and leave a review wherever you consume podcasts. You can also head on over to buildinggreatsalesteams.com and sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with everything that's going on with the podcast. See you next time.